Few figures in history have left an impact as profound as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a leader, a visionary, and a man who stood against injustice. His dream changed the world. But how did he rise to become the face of the civil rights movement? And what was the true cost of his fight for equality? Join us as we explore the remarkable story of Martin Luther King Jr., the man who changed history. Born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, Martin Luther King Jr. was raised in a deeply religious household. His father, Martin Luther King Sr., was a pastor and a strong advocate for racial equality. Young Martin grew up witnessing the harsh realities of segregation, an experience that deeply shaped his future. King excelled in school, skipping 2 grades and enrolling at Morehouse College at just 15 years old. It was there that he was introduced to the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi and nonviolent resistance. This philosophy would later become the foundation of his movement. After Morehouse, King attended Crozer Theological Seminary and later earned his Ph.D. in systematic theology from Boston University. During this time, he met Coretta Scott, an aspiring singer and activist. They married in 1953, and she became a vital partner in his fight for justice. In 1955, a pivotal moment changed the course of history. Rosa Parks, a seamstress in Montgomery, Alabama, refused to give up her seat to a white passenger. This act of defiance led to the Montgomery Bus Boycott, and at just 26 years old, Martin Luther King Jr. emerged as its leader. Despite facing arrests, threats, and bombings, King remained committed to peaceful protest. The boycott lasted over a year and ended with a Supreme Court ruling that declared segregation on buses unconstitutional. This victory solidified King as the voice of the civil rights movement. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, King led a series of nonviolent protests across the South. From sit-ins at segregated lunch counters to the Freedom Rides, the movement gained momentum. But one of the most defining moments came in 1963. In Birmingham, Alabama, one of the most segregated cities in America, King and his allies launched a series of protests. They faced brutal police violence, mass arrests, and attack dogs, yet they remained steadfast. It was during this campaign that King wrote his famous letter from Birmingham jail, defending civil disobedience and the urgency of the movement. On August 28, 1963, over 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial for the historic March on Washington. It was here that Dr. King delivered his legendary "I Have a Dream" speech. His words resonated across the nation. King's activism directly influenced major legislative changes. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, banning discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The following year, the Voting Rights Act was passed, protecting African Americans' right to vote. These victories were monumental, but the struggle was far from over. King shifted his focus to economic inequality, advocating for fair wages and better living conditions for the poor. On April 3, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. King delivered what would be his final speech. "I've been to the mountaintop." In a chilling moment, he seemed to foresee his own fate. The very next day, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. His death sent shockwaves across the world, but his message lived on. Today, his legacy continues to inspire movements for justice and equality worldwide. From Black Lives Matter to global human rights initiatives, the echoes of his dream still ring loud and clear. Decades later, his influence is still felt in classrooms, in protests, and in the very fabric of America's laws and society. His dream of racial harmony and justice is still a work in progress, but his teachings remind us that change is always possible. Martin Luther King Jr. was more than just a leader. He was a symbol of hope, courage, and resilience. His dream was not just his own, but a vision for all of humanity. And while we have made great strides, his work is far from finished. If you believe in equality, if you believe in justice, help share his message. Subscribe for more inspiring stories from history. Until next time, remember, the time is always right to do what is right.